Hey guys, welcome back for the very last tutorial of my Beautiful Things Quilt Along series, and this one is not actually my pattern. It is by Lillyella, and this is going to be like a special episode where I show you how to put Lillyella's Take Wing pattern into the backing of a quilt. So I have mocked up a couple of color variations here. And if you follow along with my Instagram, you already saw them. And I'm really excited for this, to see how it comes out. Okay, here are my two color variations. And I finally decided on this one, I think, because I think it goes with the quilt colors a little bit better, even though I'm kind of obsessed with this one. So I think I might like make another one of this colorway. But the pattern's by Lillyella Stitchery. It's seriously amazing, guys, and very intuitive as I was going through everything. I have already cut out all of my templates and taped them together. And then I read her pattern, and it says not to tape these together. But I'm a little bit obstinate, and I really don't want to tape and cut these apart again. So I'm going to just lower my stitch length and see how it does. I'm not actually using like Scotch tape. I'm using an actual packing tape, so I wonder if that will help. But I am a little bit nervous about what I might do. So I will keep you posted on that. But let's just jump right into it. I'll show you guys the fabrics that I've chosen. Here, I'm going to show you the color way again. Let's see. Sorry if I'm making you sick. I'm holding my phone because there's not a great place to set it up at my sewing station. Okay, so I've chosen all of my bluey purples out. And for the Beautiful Things Quilt Along, I used all like Andover fabrics. For this one, I've just grabbed a whole bunch of stuff from my stash. And I have all sorts of yummy stuff in there that I'm going to be using. So I will kind of show you guys my setup, which is really nice for paper piecing. If you've never done paper piecing before, don't freak out. It is kind of like the opposite of regular sewing, but I promise if you persist, you will have success and you will love it. I love it because I don't feel like I have to match up seams that much. Like you're just sewing straight on the line. But here is my paper piecing setup. So I have a small ruler with a rotating mat, a small like transportable one. Actually, this one's not my rotating one. Never mind. I didn't put my oh, it is my rotating. The bottom piece is not on it. Okay. And then I have my iron with a wool mat. It's really nice because I pretty much just have to stand up and iron and cut, and it's like right next to my station. It's even more ideal, honestly, if you don't have to move at all. So ideally I would have like a table right here to my left or to my right, but I have a whole bunch of crap everywhere. And I'm guessing that a lot of you have the same issue with hoarding craft supplies. So let's just jump straight into it. But a couple of basics. If you've paper pieced before, you know all of this. But I am going to just lower my stitch length down, and it's going to just depend on your machine. But I might lower it down even lower than I normally do because of the tape situation. So let's get started and dive straight in. Okay. I am going to be referencing this page the entire time. It's going to tell me what colors to do. And this is part of Lillyella's pattern. When you buy the PDF, this comes with it. And I just went ahead and printed like 5 of this page. And it was great because I had my kids color with me, and then I colored one that I hated and I threw it away, and then I did 2 of the other 2 that I showed you guys. So this is going to be great. And her pattern is super straightforward. So I'm going to start with my body pieces, and I'm going to do them first. And then there are 4 different wing sections. There's wing A, wing B, wing C, and wing D. So you're just going to sew them in order, and then you attach the wings together. So it's pretty straightforward that way. I can just cut my pieces apart right here on the cutting board next to me. It's wonderful. And then when you're paper piecing, and I apologize for those of you who are accustomed to paper piecing, you have these dotted lines right here, and I'm sorry, my camera's not focusing very well. You have these dotted lines right here, then you have a solid line to the inside. So this is going to be your 1/4 inch buffer. I just forgot the word for it. You guys, it's late. I'm sewing and I didn't get any sleep last night because my baby. My brain's gone. Anyway, so you start with this one. Different pattern writers have different ways of notating it some of the time, but what you're going to be focusing on is this line between 1 and 2, which is right here. So that's the first line that you're going to be sewing, and you're going to go a little bit before and a little bit after it, okay? And then once you sew that line, you have to iron every time in between and press it. I will show you guys how I make sure that you have enough fabric on this piece, because sometimes it's a little confusing because your fabric is actually going to be on the back side of this, and then you're sewing on top of this. So it's mirrored, but I do have a way of checking to make sure that your piece is large enough. So I'll show you guys some of my tips there, but I'm going to go ahead and grab my fabric. And when I cut a piece for this first one and for the second one, I just cut along as I go. I don't cut anything out to begin with because that's just a lot. I'm probably going to make my piece, my first piece, it needs to be at least a 1/4 inch longer in either direction and wider, because you need this seam allowance right here. There's the words I was looking for. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will show you guys the first one that I'm doing. Okay, I have gone ahead and sewed my first seam on the first piece, which is body A. And I think I have my stitch length just a little bit too short. But you can see I sewed that line in between the 1 and the 2. And I'm going to show you guys the back side for those of you that are just beginning the paper piece. And so you can see that my fabric is right sides together, and that this paper, the right side is on the opposite side of the number 1. So I'm using, see this diamond for number 1, I'm using that blue fabric. And then on number 2, it's going to be a white, and that's based off of the colorway that I've used. So when I sew this, I laid down my blue square on the opposite side and made sure that it covered all the way out to past my seam allowances on both sides, and that I also had at least a 1/4 inch to the top and the bottom of the diamond. Okay, when I lay it down, I just make sure that when I fold this fabric back, and sometimes I have to like hold it along that line, or I will bend it right here before I sew it to make sure that the fabric square that I've chosen is going, when I iron that open, it will cover all the way out to past these seam allowances right here. Okay. Okay, I have made significant progress on some of my blocks, and now I'm going to show you guys kind of the how-to, now that you can see more of like the fabric that I've put down and everything like that. So I finished my body pieces. There's body A, body B and body C. So I made each of these separately. I made body A first, then I made body B, then I made body C, and I trimmed them out. I trimmed them on that dotted line that I showed you guys earlier. Once I did that, and once all of my 3 body pieces were finished, I could attach them together on the solid line. So this solid line right here that we haven't sewed on yet, that's going to be the lines where we sew. It's that 1/4 inch seam that we're going to attach the wing pieces to in a little bit. So, the other thing that I've been working on is my wing A and wing C pieces. So these are going to be the upper wings. And I went ahead, I don't know if I actually told you guys, I went ahead with the peacock colorway. I did tell you that. Okay, so, I'm going to show you the back side. Oh, I actually made both wing pieces at the same time, just because it's a lot easier to keep track of like what, if you're doing a symmetrical design, what fabric is for which piece if you're doing it concurrently. So that's what I went ahead and did. My mother-in-law, Rena, who owns the cutest quilt shop, Stitch and Snip, she showed me how to do the add a 1/4 method a while ago. And that's what I'm going to show you guys today, because it seriously blew my mind. I was doing paper piecing, just kind of like, I was folding the paper myself, and then I was trying to eyeball it and make sure that I had enough, but I actually was ending up using a lot more fabric, wasting a lot more fabric, and then it was a lot more time consuming too, because you end up having to trim whatever is not in your 1/4 inch seam. I know that this is not making sense right now, unless you're like an avid paper piecer, but anyway, it was a lot more work. You were having to like sew and then trim off and then iron. So this kind of like takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, and it just makes your lines like a lot more clean, in my opinion. So I'll show you this really quick. And I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but I have finished up to my seam between piece 16 and 17, which means I have my piece 17 fabric finished. Okay. And I have not trimmed. Oh, I did. I already trimmed this one. So let me show you. I am going to flip this around so that there's no seams in between me and the next piece that I'm going to do. Okay. And I have just like a piece of template plastic, and I'm going to line it up with the next seam that I'm going to sew. And then I fold my paper back and press it back. So I can see, most of the time you're going to have like a ragged piece out here, or it's going to be longer than this. I already trimmed this one, but you would take this and then you take your add a quarter ruler. I'm using the 12-inch one, and it seriously is so nice. And then there's like a little lip on it, and you line that lip up with your paper fold, and it's pushing against it. And then you would do this on top of your mat right here. I already did it, so I'm not going to actually show you guys. And then you just rotary blade cut it. So then you would iron it. Oh, this is actually, you iron it before when you're using this method. So you iron it, and then you fold it back, trim it, and then this is going to be your 1/4 inch seam now, where I'm going to line up my next piece. So piece 18, which is what I'm on, I'm going to refer to my coloring page that I did, and this is piece 18 right here. So I'm going to use that darker blue, and I'm going to line it up. So I was going to use this pretty Tula Pink fabric, and I'm just gonna use the length of this so I know that I have enough this way, and then I'm just gonna cut off, make sure I have about a 1/4 inch extra on each side. Okay. The nice thing is you can also use the other side of the ruler just to cut a straight line, because we don't need to like measure anything specific with it. We're just... Okay, so this is going to be my piece 18. I can line it up, right sides of the fabric together with that 1/4 inch cut that I just made. And I'm actually, what the two things that I do look at is I make sure that my fabric comes at least a 1/4 inch out, more if possible, and then a 1/4 inch out. And especially on the edge here, I want it to come a little bit past it. So I'm going to scoot this to adjust that. But it's a lot less guesswork, honestly. Okay, and then I'm putting this in my machine. So far, the tape has actually been okay. We'll see how bad it is when I go to rip it out. I did take my stitch length down to 1.5, and it's gonna, I'm imagining that it could be a little bit different on each machine. But that's what I'm doing. So I'll go ahead and sew this together, and then I'll show you guys what I'm doing next. I'm just sewing straight down that line. Okay. Okay, so I now have this. I'm going to be folding this back and ironing it. Make sure that you don't have like, so obviously I didn't sew all the way down the length of my piece. Make sure that when you go to press it open, you're just pushing in the middle of that piece and then go out to the sides. Because if you like start up here, obviously this portion of it right here is not sewn down. And so your piece is going to be like off, and then you'll be so sad, because I mean, I'd hope that you would catch it. But anyway, so I'm going to iron this back, and then I'm going to repeat that same process for my next pieces. So I'm on 18. I'm going to go to the seam between 18 and 19, and then I'll just keep going in consecutive order through my pattern. Okay, so I'm just going to be showing you the next piece now, and I'm just going to be following the same process over and over again. So I finished my seam between 17 and 18. Now I'm going to my seam between 18 and 19, and everything is marked super well on Lillyella's pattern. So I'm putting my plastic template, it's just like really thin plastic, down, and then I'm putting it exactly on that line, and I'm folding it back. And again, I'm making sure that there are no seams in between me and this fold. So you wouldn't want it like this. I mean, you technically could, and it would produce the same effect, and you'd just be trimming off the side. So I guess if you're a lefty, then that works. But I just, for the sake of making sure that I'm not trimming off any like important, anything else that I've already done, that's what I do. And then I'm using this 12-inch out of quarter ruler, and there's this lip, and I'm placing it down and holding it against the paper. So I get exactly a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure that you do press this though, again, before you trim. Okay, so now I'm ready to put piece 19 down, and I'm going to use this fabric. You can see like this piece is pretty small, so I'm just going to cut about, I'm going to like cut this in half. I'm not going to measure anything. And then I'll cut this in half again, ish. Okay, And then I'm going to line up one of these straight sides, right sides of the fabric together again with my 1/4 inch seam allowance that I just cut. And I realized I wasn't very clear earlier about what to line up. So I'm not changing the fact that these two straight lines are going to be parallel to each other and they're going to be the right sides of the fabric together like that. But I'm looking at the top and the bottom of my piece to make sure that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each side of that. So let's take a look at where my piece is, and I have plenty right there and I have plenty right there. So I'm actually going to move it just a little bit this way because I want this to come off as far as possible on here. Okay. And then I'm just going to sew on that line that I had just creased and did. You can pin this if you want. I usually don't unless it's a super big piece. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'm using my, I've taken my stitch length down to 1.5. And I am using like a little bit bigger of a needle than I normally do. Just, I feel like it does make a bigger hole in the paper. But especially with the fact that I'm using tape, it's helpful. So you can see I have plenty of space right there to trim this off. So this is just going to be waste. So you can use less than I did. I like to be certain that I'm not going to be short, because if you're short, you're not going to have enough in your seam allowance, and then you're going to have to unpick it and redo it, which isn't a big deal unless you already have pieces layered over this and you're not realizing that it's not long enough until all of a sudden you thought that your block was done and, oh, it's not coming out far enough or whatever. So, my next piece is all the way over here, 20, and so I'm going to come back to my number 12 piece that I had not trimmed yet because there wasn't a seam on it, and I'll go ahead and do that. So let's swing back over here again, sorry. And here's my template plastic. My next piece is 20. So I'm going to place it along that line between what's already been finished and what hasn't, sorry, on this side, so that I can bend it back. Okay, and I'm just bending the paper back, not my fabric. Okay, I'm just gonna do this again, same exact thing. Okay, and now I'm ready to take a look at my colorway again. And piece 20 is actually going to be this background. So pieces 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 are all this background piece. So I will go ahead and do that and cut some of my pieces to get this done, and I'll show you guys what my wing A and wing C look like. Again, before you move on, I suggest doing this same exact thing on your other wing, on your other mirrored wing, so wing C. So I'm going to go ahead and put that dark piece right here, and then I'll trim this up, and then I'll do the same exact thing on this so that both of my wings get done concurrently. It's easier to just keep track of the fabric. So then I'll show you guys what that looks like, and we'll move into the second sets of the wings. So while I was putting these background pieces together on pieces wing A and wing C, I remembered one thing that I forgot to show you guys. So when you're doing this, I've already trimmed off this piece. I've went ahead and put down 20 and 21, and I'm looking at doing 22. And I've cut a piece, and sometimes on these wedge pieces that are long, it gets tricky because you want to make sure that it comes out past your 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that when you cut it, you're not going to have to redo it. So the way that I can check that is for both sides, and also width-wise, is I'll fold it back to that line, and it will fold back my 1/4 inch seam allowance that I already trimmed up. And I can see that my piece comes out plenty far enough, so I have over a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this side. I have plenty this way, because I'm working on this piece 22 right here. And then I also have plenty of length this way, because it's coming out way past a 1/4 inch on this side. So that is a way that you can check to make sure that your piece is wide and long enough every time, is just by flipping it and then folding the piece over on itself on that line that you created, to ensure that it comes out and gives you enough seam allowance. So if you have questions about that, or that seemed unclear, go ahead and just shoot me an email or leave a note in the comments, and I can try to work with you on it a little bit more. But that's the gist of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish these up, both wing A and wing C, and then I'll show you how I'm trimming them. So I finished my wings A and C, and now I'm ready to trim them up. Okay, so I'm just going to use like my regular Creative Grids ruler. It's called the Quick Trim and Circle ruler, and there's a 1/4 inch. It shows the 1/4 inch seam allowance around it, and that's nice just because I can line my 1/4 inch seam allowance up with the solid line, and then I'll be cutting on this dotted line right here that gives me the 1/4 inch seam allowance. But I can line both of those up with this ruler, and I'll be cutting, and I can slide this. Okay. And now you can see this is the section where I'm going to be sewing it to the other pieces of butterfly. Now you can see right here, this is why it's nice to have extra fabric sometimes, because that right there is it's not what that's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be going all the way to the edge, but because I have that 1/4 inch seam allowance there, it's going to fall within that. It's going to fall like right there, but that doesn't give me very much seam allowance. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and fudge this, but I really shouldn't. I really should have made sure that that piece was big enough, and you can do it using the test method. I was going so fast that I didn't double check my work, and then after I had done a couple, I saw it and was like, oh shoot. But at that point, I wasn't wanting to repick. So because it does fall within that 1/4 inch seam allowance, it will technically be covered, but it will not be as strong of a seam because it is not going out all the way to the edge. So just something to be wary of. I'll go ahead and finish trimming this up, and then I'll show you guys. I mean, there's nothing super special about trimming other than just make sure that you do it straight on your lines, and that you're not trimming that solid line, that you're trimming the outer edge so that you're leaving a 1/4 inch seam. Other than that, there's nothing special about the rest of this process. You're just going to kind of like rinse and repeat on all of these other things, and then you're eventually going to go to your wings B and D, which are the bottom wings, And again, you'll just follow your color worksheet that you made. So I'll be doing purples for that. But once I do that, we'll go back and I'll give you guys some tips on how to put all of these pieces together so that everything gets lined up straight and everything like that. So we'll get to that point and then I'll show you my finished pieces. Okay, I have finished all the components for the Take Wing paper piecing pattern. So I have my body piece, and then I have 2 sets of these, but they're mirrored, and 2 sets of these and that are also mirrored. So I went ahead and already pinned my wing A and wing B together. And when I do it, I'll take this one out so that you can see. I choose one side to pin through, and I make sure that I'm going through and that my 1/4 inch seam allowances are matching up right there. And then if you like torque it too much, then it can also move it. So as I'm sewing down this line, I'm going to gently pull this out, and then I'll finish pulling it 100% of the way out right when the machine is just before this. So, and then I'll just go down this way. So I only pinned the places where it needs to meet up, which is the beginning and the end, and then these cross points where the wing A pattern meets with this pattern. So for this one, it's going to be right here on the corner of the 1, which is going to meet with this point on the end of 14. So you can just take note of these. And then you can also see it on your coloring page. So I just referenced this, and I looked at, here's my wing A, here's my wing B. And so I can see the places here where they need to match up those corners. And I'm just ensuring that those corners are going to meet right exactly at the 1/4 inch seam allowance place. So, and if I have a really thick seam right there, because there are a couple of points where on this, where you can see there's quite a bit of fabric, quite a few fabric layers that I'm sewing through right here. So I'll just be going a scant 1/4 inch allowance right there. And then I'll show you what that looks like. And then I'll finish putting my other side together. And once your wings are all the way assembled, so your wing A is attached to wing B and your wing C is attached to wing D, then you put 1 on each side of your body pieces. Hey guys, I finished my Take Wing butterfly backing in the peacock colorway that I was showing you earlier, and I have all of the piecing done around it. So sorry, it's up on my design wall and it's freaking huge, so I couldn't get the whole thing in one shot. But just a couple of notes. I did end up taking the papers out of these before I attached the wings and the body pieces together, just because it was so much bulk. And you can see I didn't even get everything lined up perfectly because there is a lot of bulk in it, but it turned out beautiful. I really love it. I'm going to show you guys the measurements really quick for the backing pieces that I did. And you can see that I just used, so this finished block ends up at 24 inches by 15 inches. And so I just made up the difference and then just pieced everything else together. So for those of you that don't want to measure it out yourselves and want to just do the same thing that I did, I'll show you that really quick. Okay, so I chose to do my butterfly in the bottom quadrant of my quilt backing. Sorry, my kids are in the background. It's a Saturday and we're having some struggles. Okay, so 24 by 15, this is my butterfly. Sorry. And what I ended up doing is this piece and this piece are about 8 by 15. Some of it I ended up actually trimming off as I went, so you just want to make sure that you kind of square it. I almost treated it like it was paper piecing as I was going. So I went ahead and cut an 8-inch by width of fabric. And then I subcut those into, sorry, 8.5-inch by width of fabric. I subcut those into two 8.5-inch by 15.5-inch cuts, and then I added those to the sides. And then I trimmed my block down just to kind of square it up. Okay, and then I added another piece right here that was 15 inches. Sorry, this is not going to totally be in proportion, but 15 inches by, I think it was like, well, I just used the width of fabric, I believe, here. So I just trimmed off the selvage, and then I started sewing here and went to the edge. So you can trim it down more than that, but so you're going to have an 8.5 by width of fabric cut. You're going to have a 15.5 by width of fabric cut, and that you're going to piece onto this. Okay, and then after you piece all of that together, you're going to have a we're going to have a width of fabric by 30.5 inch. So you're going to have a 30.5 inch by width of fabric cut, and then I just sewed that 30.5 inches right here and the width of fabric right here again. Okay, and then the last two, you're going to need another 4 yards of fabric after this. So you'll need two 2-yards. So you're going to need two 2-yard cuts by width of fabric. I just trimmed the selvage off, and then I pieced them together, and they were right here. I hope that gives you kind of the picture. These are the cuts that you'll need, so you can tally them all together. I know that that's kind of rough, but that's how it is. Okay, so I used 6 yards approximately for the backing of the quilt. Half yard for the background piecing of that dark brownish black piece in the actual paper piecing of the butterfly block. And then the rest of the 5.5 yards was for the piecing. So you have an 8.5 inch by width of fabric piece, a 15.5 inch by width of fabric piece, a 30.5 inch by width of fabric piece, and then you have two 2-yard pieces. And if you head over to my blog, I'm going to post more instructions there so that you can follow it along step by step. But thank you guys for participating in this quilt along with me. And thank you to Lillyella for the pattern. It was beautiful and super fun, easy to follow. If you are also wanting to purchase Lillyella's Take Wing pattern, it's available on her blog, or not on her blog, on her Etsy store. And I have a 20% discount code. For those of you who are watching, you can use the code Beautiful Things, and you'll get 20% off of her pattern, which is a steal because it's really not an expensive pattern to begin with and super fun. So we'll see you guys next time, and thank you.